Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for coming today to this very happy occasion. This morning, when I was deciding which tie to wear, I looked for something with a lighter blue in it, but couldn't find it, but at least it's blue and yellow, because I was thinking of the symbolism of this occasion, 65 years of the Ukrainian service of the Voice of America. This is not an unimportant event. This is a particularly significant one, especially given what's been happening for the last year. So I'm David Ensor, the director of the Voice of America, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the celebration of the 65th anniversary of the foundation of the VOA Ukrainian Service. No one could have predicted that this past year would be one of the most important years in Ukrainian history, the year of the massive Euromaidan protests, the violent government crackdown on demonstrators, President Yanukovych fleeing the country, Russian aggression against Ukraine, including the annexation of Crimea and support for separatist conflict in the Donbass region, the presidential and the parliamentary elections, all of that within the span of 1 year. And VOA's Ukrainian service was there for our audience in Ukraine throughout, rising to the challenge of keeping our audience informed, particularly about the U.S. official reaction to the crises, as well as American expert analysis of the situation. VOA's credible and comprehensive reporting was countering the onslaught of Russian propaganda and was, we hope and we believe, a reassuring daily presence on the Ukrainian airwaves and online. The Ukrainian VOA service surged in response to these multiple crises, and that has been a considerable success. Research shows that the weekly reach of the VOA Ukrainian service is now over 18% of the country. That means that about 1 in 5 people in Ukraine are seeing a VOA broadcast every single week. This past June, I traveled to Kiev, the Ukrainian capital, and I visited the Maidan with most of the barricades, encampments, and memorials to those that were killed still in place at the time. It was an incredibly sad and moving experience for me, as I know it may have been for some of you here when you've been there. I met with young professionals and students on the trip and heard firsthand about their experiences on the Maidan, their aspirations and commitment to transforming Ukraine into a modern, democratic, and prosperous European country. In a meeting with the foreign minister and his deputy, we talked together about the common need we have for a concerted effort to counter Russian propaganda. And of course, I visited with our partners, the partner stations in Ukraine, such as Channel 5, ICTV, and First National TV, and worked with them on expanding our cooperation and collaboration in the new freer media atmosphere that now exists in Ukraine. That visit demonstrated to me the vital importance of VOA's Ukraine service for Ukraine and for the United States. And so I want to congratulate our service on a tremendous year of broadcasting achievements and its 65th birthday, a proud legacy of service to the Ukrainian people and to the American people, because this strong service is very much in our own country's interests as well as Ukraine's. There are a lot of people, I can't mention everybody, but I'd like to mention a few people that are just so important to the success of the service. Obviously, Mirosława Gongadze, who co-hosted a series of parliamentary debates on First National TV in the last short time, traveled in the reporters' pool for Vice President Biden's recent trip to Ukraine, and is a stalwart anchor and reporter for the service. Yulia Yarmolenko from ICTV, who just completed a 3-month fellowship here at the Ukrainian service, during which she filed 40 original reports on U.S.-Ukrainian relations, U.S. foreign policy, and on life in America. Ruslan Petrenka, who filed live reports from the White House for several stations, reporting on Ukrainian President Poroshenko's recent visit to Washington. Tanya Koprovich and Natalia Robert, who host the new Studio Washington program for people in Ukraine who prefer to obtain their information in the Russian language. Zorysław Diuk and Uliana Lewenberg, host and editor respectively of the weekly Window on America features TV show, which also has a certain legacy to it. It's been going 20 years ago now and still going very strong. There are many others, but I'm going to turn the chair over to one of them, our wonderful, intelligent, insightful, kind, and inspiring leader of the Ukrainian service, Adrian Karmazyn. Adrian, please come up. And before I give you the podium, I want to give you a certificate of appreciation from me, from the Voice of America, for to mark the occasion of this wonderful birthday. Thank you. Congratulations. Over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, David. It was great to have traveled to Ukraine with you earlier this year, back in June. And I wanted to mention that one of my favorite moments of the trip was actually when we were having dinner one evening, and the newscast of 1+1 came on, and you kind of like stopped, paused, you got up, you walked over to the TV mounted on the wall, and you just stood there, sort of mesmerized, actually, if I might say that, for a few minutes. And it seemed that you were very impressed with what you saw, and it kind of felt good for you to know the media market that we, intimately, that we work with, kind of all the effort that we have to put in to make sure that our shows match the level of sophistication of the Ukrainian television market. I'm Adrian Karmazyn. I'm chief of the Ukrainian service here at Voice of America. And besides the journalists that David already mentioned, I wanted to also recognize the rest of the members of the team. They are Anna Diuk, Ihor Hulave, Oleksij Kuzmenko, Oleksandr Yanevsky, Bogdan Supin, Irina Matvichuk, Tanya Harchenko, Oksana Tsisik, Ruslan Denechenko, and Oksana Lihostova. I'm truly honored to work with such a talented and dedicated group. Today is an opportunity for the Ukrainian service to take a pause and pat ourselves on the back. I know I can't be very objective, but I think we did pretty well this year. As David mentioned, an 18% audience weekly reach. 1 in 5 people in a week are seeing our shows. But this is, what we do is truly a community effort, and so this is a community celebration, and many people from that community are here with us today. I'm referring to all the producers, directors, technical staff, video editors, journalists, and others outside of the Ukrainian service who help us get the shows on the air 365 days a year. I'm also referring to the officials and lawmakers that work on U.S.-Ukrainian relations and come on our shows to explain U.S. policy and U.S. actions. I'm referring to the think tank experts and democracy-building experts that analyze the situation for our viewers. I'm also talking about the Ukrainian officials that come on our programs to provide their perspective on U.S.-Ukrainian relations and trends in Ukraine. I'm referring to the business community representatives that we interview to better understand what is needed for Ukraine to prosper. And I have in mind the Ukrainian-American community and the cultural and fundraising events that they hold in support of Ukraine. So today's Ukrainian service celebration, from my perspective, is really a celebration of our entire community of democracy builders, freedom builders, and prosperity builders. We were hoping to have one of Ukraine's best friends on Capitol Hill here today. She's a lawmaker who is co-chair of the Congressional Ukrainian Caucus and who has spent much of her congressional career representing the Toledo area of Ohio. But thanks to the magic of redistricting, her district now stretches all the way into the Ukrainian ethnic neighborhoods of Cleveland, Ohio. Due to the important votes that are taking place on Capitol Hill this morning, including funding for the Voice of America, I believe, she isn't able to join us. But we do have a video greeting from Representative Marcy Kaptur, and so we're going to present that to you now.
I wanted to congratulate the Ukrainian Service for 65 years of broadcasting and to congratulate them on this very significant anniversary. To open communication across borders, to try to inform, to try to probe the truth, and to share that truth globally. We're very proud of all of the reporters, of the broadcasters, many of whom over the years have risked much in their own personal lives in order to report what is happening. So congratulations. We're very proud of you.
And now I'd like to ask Allison Jarus from Congresswoman Kaptur's office up to the podium to say a few words.
Thank you, Adrian. As usual, my boss is far more eloquent than I can ever be, so I hope to represent her well here in her stead. Thank you so much for having me. Of course, we want to, in person, again, congratulate you for 65 years of the Ukrainian service here at VOA. Again, Congresswoman Kaptur sends her regrets and deeply wishes that she could be here, but as Adrian alluded to, things are a little busy on the House floor this week. You may or may not know that. As a longtime supporter of VOA and Ukraine, the Congresswoman remains committed to assisting and helping VOA onto the next 65 years and beyond. This past year, as of course we all know in this room, has been incredibly challenging, and VOA's service in Ukraine has been more important than ever. Some of the comments have already alluded to the Euromaidan, the elections, the invasion of Crimea, the continued Russian invasion on the eastern border, and now the next chapter of reform efforts that the Ukrainian government will undertake. My boss, Congresswoman Kaptur, along with you, will again remain committed to seeing those reforms done and stays a steadfast friend to Ukraine here in the U.S. VOA Ukrainian Service has been an integral part of educating not only those Ukrainians, but here in the U.S. We use them on the Hill. We use them among lawmakers and others. And again, as Adrian alluded to, my boss is a senior appropriator, and we are taking on the bill today. We will continue to fight for the funding that VOA and particularly Ukrainian Service deserves explicitly. And we hope that you will use those funds to carry out the mission that you have so done with such effort this past year. For those who follow closely, I will very briefly speak to some of the legislative initiatives that are currently being undertaken on the floor. Within the omnibus bill that we are passing, hopefully today, we have seen an increase in funding for Ukraine assistance. Over $500 million, so real money. And we hope to see that money passed in the bill immediately so that we can continue to support Ukrainian efforts. Thank you. It's incredibly important to fund the European Reassurance Initiative, which you are familiar with. The ERI was funded at a level of $810 million. And among that, 175 specifically for Ukraine and the Baltics, another very important step. We hope to see the military construction designed to enhance our U.S. military presence in Eastern Europe, loan guarantees, creation of a new framework to assist Ukraine, and eventually we would hope to see the passage of S-2828, which has had some positive movement on the Senate floor today, as I understand. I don't want to speak out of turn, but there has been positive movement on that bill, so please continue to watch closely. I said I would keep my comments very brief, so again, I just want to thank you so much for having us. Congresswoman Kaptur remains a friend and is very honored to be included among these distinguished guests. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Allison. And again, welcome to all our distinguished guests, including the next two, which are Ambassador Bill Taylor and Ambassador Oleksandr Motsyk. And so first we'll turn to Ambassador Taylor. He was the U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine from 2006 to 2009 and is now the acting president of the U.S. Institute of Peace. Besides the current ambassador, Jeffrey Pyatt, there are now 7 former U.S. ambassadors to Ukraine: Ambassadors Taylor, Miller, Pfeiffer, Pasquale, Popadiuk, Herbst, and Teft. Soon there will be enough of them to actually field a baseball team. So that should be interesting. So without further ado, I'd like to ask Ambassador Taylor to say a few words.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you. It's great to be here. I didn't realize I was going to be representing all 7 of us, but I'm very, very glad to do that. This is a group of people who are honored to have been able to serve in Kyiv, and so it's a great opportunity for me to be here in this group. Congratulations to the Voice of America Ukrainian Service. This is a great tribute. 65 years of doing this. Lots gone on in 65 years. We can go through all of those things. You've given voice to the kinds of people who, some of whom are in this room, Miroslava Gongadze, and that whole team that you've already talked about, you both have spoken to, but others as well, others in Ukraine. This week, many of us saw 3 young Ukrainians, young, like under 35 Ukrainians being honored for their democratic achievements that they have. Sergei Levchenko, Hanna Hopko, Oleksandr Solonte. One of my friends in Kyiv, who was not here this week, is Alexander Gorgon. These people have worked on and struggled on the Maidan and have now stepped into responsible positions in the government. And you have covered that. The Voice of Ukraine, Voice of America Ukraine Service has covered that and has given voice to these kinds of people. I was in Kyiv last week, and the interest in the new government there was palpable. You could feel this. Not the least because there were 3 foreigners named to the cabinet, one of whom is a Ukrainian-American, very, very accomplished Nadia Jaresko, who has been working with many of us in this room for some time, and demonstrates that the commitment of this government to bring in the best people around the world, as many of the Ukrainian corporations have done. They bring in the best people around the world, and that's what this government is doing too. A commitment to honesty and a commitment to fight corruption, to move forward on reform. This is what you have covered. This is what we need to support, and I'm hopeful that all of the kinds of things that are on the floor that Congresswoman Kaptur is pushing, and those on the Senate side as well, will move forward in these regards. So congratulations to you. Thank you for letting me represent the other ambassadors who wish they would be here, and I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Taylor. Next, it's my pleasure to welcome Ukraine's ambassador to the United States, Oleksandr Motsyk, to the stage. It's my understanding, Mr. Ambassador, that you might be carrying something very special for the service in that diplomatic pouch of yours.
Mr. Director, Ambassador Taylor, дорогі Adrian, ladies and gentlemen, I am greatly honored to join you in celebrating the 65th anniversary of the Voice of America Ukrainian Service. During all these years, the service was and remains a reliable source of unbiased information for Ukrainians throughout the world. During the Cold War, radio broadcasts by the Voice of America gave Ukrainians opportunities to learn about global and Ukrainian events. I recall myself as a teen listening to your broadcasts with a trembling heart. Actually, they formed mindsets of many generations of Ukrainians. The Voice of America Ukrainian Service was actively covering crucial events in Ukraine, including the declaration of independence of our country, the 2004 Orange Revolution, and the 2013 Revolution of Dignity. It was the time of the Orange Revolution that gave birth to the Just Time program that keeps on providing the Ukrainian audience with a weighted coverage of events in Ukraine, Ukraine-US relations, and global events. We should say special thanks to the Voice of America's coverage of the Russian aggression against Ukraine and the U.S. reaction to Russia's interference in Ukraine's east. The new Russian language programs initiated recently by the Voice of America will promote the debunking of the Kremlin propaganda aimed at justification of Russia's hybrid war in Ukraine and bringing true information to Russian-speaking audience. Finally, I'd like to wish the staff of the Voice of America Ukrainian Service creativity, inspiration, and all the best. On the side of Ukraine will, let me assure you that Ukraine will work hard to make sure that as much as possible good news comes from Ukraine and our country is perceived globally as a peaceful, free, democratic European state. Now, please allow me to read the greetings by President of Ukraine Petro Poroshenko and by Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk. President of Ukraine, to the Voice of America Ukrainian Service on the occasion of the 65th anniversary of establishment. Dear friends, back in 1942, your radio station started its operation in English with words that did not lose their topicality today. And I quote, "We will be with you from America to talk about the war. The news may be good or bad for us. We will always tell you the truth." And we'll quote him. For decades, your radio waves brought not only the truth, but also some viruses of liberty, breath of free democratic world to Ukraine. Many Ukrainian politicians and civic activists formed their mindset because of you. I thank the Voice of America Ukrainian Service for the job and the contribution to the formation of free democratic Ukraine. We appreciate your continued efforts today when Ukraine fights for its territorial integrity and independence in the war, where we have to fight informational aggression of hatred and lie in addition to armed attacks. I believe that due to the Voice of America Ukrainian Service, the truth about events in Ukraine and the world will assist the defenders of democracy in winning not only at battlefields, but also in human souls. Petro Poroshenko. Prime Minister of Ukraine, Ukrainian Service, to Mr. Adrian Karmazyn, Ukrainian Service Chief of the Voice of America. Dear friends, on the occasion of the 65th anniversary of the Voice of America Ukrainian Service, please accept my sincere congratulations and gratitude for your work. Throughout all those years, you broke through jamming to Ukrainians with truth about the tragedy and fight of the Ukrainian people and about the crimes of communism. The Voice of America provided us with a sober analysis of post-Soviet development of the country, its problems and opportunities. Now we receive information about Russia's military aggression against Ukraine and its global perception. The Voice of America means not only reliable information, but also an opportunity to feel the support of nations and backing by the people of goodwill, of Ukrainians who defend in arms the freedom and dignity of the whole free world. Ukraine's decisiveness about its European choice makes especially topical the experience of countries who have long-standing traditions of democratic development and economy of mass media operation. I wish you continued steadfast advance along the road you chose, as well as successes and achievements in the performance of your noble mission. Arseniy Yatsenyuk. And I have one more good news for you today. I would like to announce some special decree of the President of Ukraine. decree of the President of Ukraine on award of Princess Olga Ode to Miroslava Hongadze. For the weighty personal contribution to the development of journalism, active civic efforts, and high professional skills, I decree to award Princess Olga Ode of third class to Hongadze Miroslava Vladimirovna, journalist and TV anchor, President of Ukraine Petro Poroshenko. Kyiv, December 10, 2014. That means that the order is on its way to the United States of America, but by today's flight from Kyiv to New York City. Okay, so Miroslav, congratulations.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Motsyk. Congratulations, Miroslava. I'd also like to mention that we received a congratulatory greeting letter from the new chairperson of the Parliament's Free Speech Committee, Free Speech and Information Committee. That's Victoria Sumar, a good friend of ours in the Ukrainian service. She served as our Kyiv correspondent for 10 years, starting in 1999. So another great story from our legacy, building on our legacy. Victoria writes that VOA is essential in the struggle against Russian aggression and the struggle for a democratic and free European Ukraine. Next, I'd like to welcome David Kramer to the stage. David is currently with the McCain Institute, and up until recently was the president of Freedom House, and is a frequent guest on our broadcasts. As you all know, Freedom House publishes annual rankings of media freedom in the world and remind us how few countries in the world enjoy the wide access to information and credible journalism that we have here in the United States. David.
Thanks very much, Adrian, and congratulations to you and David and the whole tremendous team at VOA Ukrainian Service. I also want to single out Miroslava because one thing I learned many years ago is you actually can't say no to Miroslava. She calls you up and says, I need a comment on this, and the answer is not going to be yes or no, it's going to be when can you do it. Very well-earned tribute to you, Miroslava. Congratulations. This is, I think, a very important moment, as other speakers have said, and as others have also said, this underscores the importance of continuing VOA's critical work as we see the information war unleashed from the Kremlin, having VOA and the other services provide the truth and what objectivity is and what's really happening in the world is critically important. It's also critically important for Ukrainian listeners and viewers to understand that the United States cares, that the West cares, that the West is watching, and that we are trying to do what we can through many different means, including VOA, most importantly, to help them in their vital transformation. It's a very inspiring time based on Ukrainian civil society and journalists who have shown tremendous initiative in demanding a better future for their country. But it's also a very difficult and challenging time as we see Ukraine occupied, under attack, the victim of Russian war and aggression. So it is my hope that we can celebrate and mark future anniversaries of VOA's Ukrainian service, looking at a much better, brighter situation in the present and in the future. So again, let me join in offering my congratulations on this important anniversary, and I hope to have a happier note for all of us in the future for other anniversaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Another speaker today who has been deeply engaged in supporting NGO and free media development in Ukraine for many years is Nadia Diuk, who is Vice President of the National Endowment for Democracy. Nadia.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. I'm a big fan of Voice of America. Mr. Ambassadors, it's great to see you here too. Congratulations, Miroslava. That's a terrific tribute to you and your work. And I can also confirm that when you say no to Miroslava, it's just the beginning of the negotiation. No is not really no. I'd like, in a sense, to just compliment a little bit some of the things that have been said here today and just put things in a little bit of a broader context, maybe, because we've had many anniversaries being celebrated in Washington in the past couple of weeks, so I think we're in good company here. It was International Human Rights Day yesterday. In fact, 64 years since the United Nations declared that December 10th should be the day. So hopefully Voice of America was already covering it even back then. And there have been a series of events commemorating the 25th anniversary of the events of 1989, which brought freedom to Eastern Europe and an end to the Cold War. And we've been privileged in Washington to witness the unveiling of a bust of the late and great Václav Havel in the Congress. Only the fourth non-American to be honored in this way in the hallowed halls of our great democracy. The further we draw away from Havel, the more clarity we gain in seeing his ideas on the power of the powerless and his unfailing support for the values of freedom and the integrity of citizens' roles in shaping a state's destiny as ideals to aspire to. I might also mention that we remembered another noble Central European at NED this week in the celebration of the centenary of Jan Nowak Jezioransky, a longtime director of the Polish service of Radio Free Europe and a freedom fighter for Poland who brought news to the Allies during the Second World War about the situation in Poland and about the Holocaust. And Jan, I knew him well, was a big advocate of freedom and democracy in Ukraine. We worked together very closely on that. And then there was also the first anniversary of the Maidan, Ukraine's revolution of dignity. It's a very young anniversary compared with some of the others, and it reflects the new politics and the new country that are only just emerging. So this week we've had, as has been mentioned, the celebration of democracy awards given to 3 young politicians from Ukraine, all of them in their early 30s. One of them a former Reagan Fussell Fellow, and another one I believe was a grantee. There was an event which was addressed by the Vice President of the United States and also America's first female Secretary of State, the formidable Madeleine Albright. And who could have imagined that a few years ago? An event devoted all to Ukraine with such eminent speakers, and it seemed like hundreds of people there for those of us who were there. So this brings me to the 65th anniversary of the Ukrainian service that we are celebrating today, and I'd like to share a few thoughts. 65 years seems like a long time to have only just brought us to the 1-year anniversary of Maidan. But in a way, this reinforces my conviction that the challenges along the path to freedom for Ukraine have been greater than for others, and that ultimately Ukraine's success will bring along with it a greater benefit than just the interests of the people in Ukraine. At each step of the way, Ukraine and its people have been innovators, and their creative spirit has shown through all of the repressions and all the turmoil. And I believe it has been reflected in the quality of broadcasting we have seen in the Ukrainian service. Just as 23 years ago it became clear that the Soviet Empire could not exist without Ukraine, and Ukraine became the leading edge of the dissolution of the Soviet Union, today, Ukrainian broadcasting, as has been pointed out, has the enormous task of being that first barricade against the tidal wave of propaganda that is coming from Russia, that is reshaping the post-Cold War order as the newest weapon used by Russia in its aggression, not only in Ukraine, but around the world. Working at the National Endowment for Democracy brings us in touch with the journalists and activists on the ground who are engaged in the difficult task of building democracy and defending freedom. And we have seen how news and honest information from the broadest range of sources is so crucially important. And Voice of America's Ukrainian service continues to be a leader in that difficult task. So I congratulate you on 65 years of work and wish you the strength and courage in this new phase of our common struggle to push forward the boundaries of freedom and make not just Ukraine, but also the entire region a better place for its citizens to live. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Nadia, and thank you so much for being a frequent guest on our programs and for channeling so many of those activists and journalists to us, for us to get them on the air, for them to share their experiences and their aspirations with a larger audience. As David had mentioned, the Voice of America is the voice of the American people. And naturally, when it comes to issues relating to Ukraine, the loudest voice is that of Ukrainian Americans. And among Ukrainian Americans, perhaps the loudest voice here in Washington is that of Michael Salku. He's the director of the Ukrainian National Information Service. Michael?
A loud voice. I hope that's a good thing. Mr. Ambassadors, Director Ensor, VOA Ukrainian Service Director Karmazyn, it's obviously an honor and a pleasure to be here celebrating and congratulating you on 65 years' worth of your service and dedication to journalism, to the ethics associated with providing that type of information to Ukraine. My remarks are fairly formal, but at the same time, they also represent what we, on behalf of the Ukrainian community, feel and value of the Ukrainian service of the Voice of America. It's reliable, it's authentic, it's objective, and it's comprehensive. These are the principal reasons why people from across the globe have been tuning in to Voice of America for decades. Rising to prominence in the height of Soviet misinformation and propaganda, VOA's objective was quite clear: to illuminate America's policies and offer a perspective of the outside world not tainted by the indoctrination of corrupt totalitarian regimes. The Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, on behalf of the Ukrainian American community, congratulates the Voice of America Ukrainian Service on its 65th anniversary in providing information to Ukraine. During those dark days of Soviet power in Ukraine, VOA Ukrainian Service became a beacon of hope and a plethora of news to a society otherwise locked in an informational vacuum. Though Ukraine achieved its independence, the defining issue was not the end of the Cold War, but the U.S. ability to continuously convey to Ukrainians unfiltered information about America, its policies, and its values. The Voice of America Ukrainian Service built its credibility over decades as a source of accurate, undistorted, comprehensive information about the United States. From the date it went on the air in 1949, it declared that we will tell you the truth, good or bad. Such truths now may be self-evident, as witnessed within the dynamic events in Ukraine within the past year. Ukraine displayed tremendous achievements in its efforts to integrate into Euro-Atlantic community of free and democratic nations. That journey, however, is far from complete. The increasing anti-American and anti-Western stance fostered by the Russian government requires significant international attention and resources, as evidenced and proposed in two bills currently under review in Congress, to prevent additional attempts and tactics against Ukraine or others in the region, be it in an informational nature, an economic nature, political nature, or worst of all, militaristic. One of the proven and most effective techniques to negate such behavior is to continue vigorous broadcasting about current events and to offer objective analysis. Today, the Voice of America continues to serve as a beacon of impartial reporting in war-torn Ukraine. In areas of Ukraine befallen to Russian invasion and destabilization, the significance of an independent news source is crucial in this unprecedented era in Ukrainian history. The Voice of America, the Ukrainian service, has not only kept the traditions of the Ukrainian nation alive, but has honored the nation in which we reside by upholding the principle of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, freedom of speech. A free and independent media is indeed the cornerstone to a successful democracy. May this anniversary bring you many more years of fortitude in your continued work of advocacy of our common concerns. Щасти вам, Боже, многое літа.
Thank you so much, Michael. So if we joke that you might have the loudest voice on Ukrainian affairs, perhaps the next person, the next speaker might be able to claim that they have the richest voice. I'm talking about our next guest is Morgan Williams, president of the U.S.-Ukraine Business Council, which represents some 200 companies doing business or trying to do business in Ukraine. Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Director, ambassadors, distinguished guests, and the Voice of America, the voice of the Voice of America, Ukrainian Service, Miroslava, on your award. The business community is very pleased to be represented here today. As you know, for business to thrive in a country, we do need stability, we do need democracy, we do need free enterprise, and, of course, we need freedom of the press. And the battle in Ukraine, of course, continues. And the business community is to be congratulated on what they've done the past year to stay involved in Ukraine and to adjust and to survive under very difficult circumstances. Many of them have lost 25% of their business because of eastern Ukraine and Crimea. Many of them have lost trucks, warehouses, stores, and suffered substantial losses. But they, to the most degree, have stayed involved in Ukraine. They want to be in Ukraine. They want to expand in Ukraine, and basically they're a major part of the future of Ukraine. Ukraine today must improve its business environment in the next year if it's going to create the jobs and wealth needed for the Ukrainian people and also meet the international demands for reforms so that additional assistance can be available from the West. As you know, as has been mentioned here, all of a sudden the Voice of America has a major competitor which is well-funded and very strong and lots of very deceptive writers called the Voice of Putin. And the Voice of Putin, as we know, is not just aggressive in Ukraine, it's aggressive around the world. And of course, it, in many ways, is exactly the opposite of the Voice of America and the information that they're providing. The business community, as I said, believes strongly in the freedom of the press. They're not interested in supporting the voice of Putin and what he has done in Ukraine for now and the future. So for the entire business community who is still interested in putting hundreds of millions of dollars in Ukraine and who has done everything possible to survive the past year and stay involved in Ukraine, the job of the Voice of America has just begun. We need the Voice of America now more than ever. We need to work together with the business community and all of you to move Ukraine forward. The next 12 months is very critical. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Morgan. I do recall one time you explaining kind of in a very pragmatic way why it is that investors are interested in Ukraine. What is this Ukraine's potential that we always hear about? And I very much appreciated how you put it in very pragmatic terms. There are 40 million people that want to buy homes, build homes, furnish their apartments, buy appliances, buy cars. So I always appreciate your participating in our programs and bringing those kind of messages, those simple but very true messages to our audience about what business, American investment, and American involvement in Ukraine can help bring to the Ukrainian people. I'd like to wrap up today's program with a brief video feature. After leaving VOA, many of our former colleagues have gone on to do some pretty interesting things. Some have become journalism professors, 2 have been elected to the Ukrainian parliament, and some are simply improving their golf game. But one of our former colleagues ended up on the Euromaidan at the beginning of this year. His name is George Sayevich, and we know him well. George spent 35 years in the Ukrainian service before retiring a few years ago. And you're about to see an interview that we conducted with him, our correspondents conducted with him in Ukraine just a week or two ago, a couple weeks ago, on the anniversary of the beginning of the Euromaidan protests.
Я приїхав 1 січня.
I arrived on January 1st. I wanted to see firsthand what the Maidan is about. I'd been watching it from abroad on Ukrainian television. After a day or two, I knew I would be here until the end. I didn't have any doubts or second thoughts. On February 18th, I was injured pretty seriously at the hands of the riot police, a unit from Crimea. There was a group that outnumbered us, and they came at us with such force, such ferociousness and anger and hatred, that when they beat me up, I was covered in blood and waiting in the first aid area. A Berkut policeman was standing next to me, so pleased, and smilingly said in Russian, "Aha, so you wanted to have your Ukraine." Would a Ukrainian say that? So I came to the conclusion that they beat us with truncheons with the intent to kill. And they did kill. I had a motorcycle helmet on that saved my life. It was smashed to bits. Nothing was left of it. It saved my life, but not others. There were many corpses. I am very dismayed that no one has been punished for such cruelty, for such crimes. It's just unbelievable. How can a country exist with these kinds of principles of justice? Even the person that gave the command to shoot, that directed these actions, was released by the courts. How can this be? It can't be. I think my presence here is proof that there was no American assistance. The mighty USA sends a 69-year-old invalid? That's very strange. I was on the Maidan. I saw no evidence that anyone was paid. There's no evidence of Americans being involved. And that's why they latched onto Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland's appearance, visiting the Maidan and handing out cookies. Aha, see. There was no need. There is no evidence. This was all spontaneous. It is Yanukovych who is to blame, or even Putin, for giving the order to disperse the student protests. That's how it all started. The days on the Maidan were the best times of my life. I am very encouraged by the fact that the Maidan created a new spirit among Ukrainians. Ukrainians were known for an attitude of complacency. But the Maidan has swept this away. A wave of volunteerism has emerged. I love it so much when people take part. Don't just complain about the authorities, but take action. And it also pleases me that this spirit has caught on in the diaspora. I would now like to find some volunteer activity for myself in eastern Ukraine. I might train to serve as a medic on the battlefield.
And so that brings us to the conclusion of our program today. Thank you so much for coming to the anniversary celebration today of our first Ukrainian language broadcast 65 years ago. Tomorrow, actually, December 12th, 1949, was the first Ukrainian language broadcast. Thank you so much for coming.